Welcome to another version of our Voices of the Network podcast. I, as always, am Erin, your intrepid American host, and I am so delighted today. This is one of my passions. And even in our pre chat, I couldn't wait to hit the record button. So today we're talking with Bob Price. Bob is the Learning Development Business Partner at United Welsh. He's also on the Wales Housing Association L&D Network. He has been in learning and development for years, doing everything from content development to stand-up facilitation. And today, throw away your checkbooks. Don't worry about credit cards. We're talking about budgeting up. Bob, thank you so much for joining me.
It's very much my pleasure. This subject is a real passion of mine, I have to say.
I,
Um,
I love it.
yeah, it's something which I have been, if you like, I've had to do and learned a lot in the process. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. So, Bob, my first question, why learning? Of all the things you could be doing with your time.
You know what? I have absolutely no idea how I ended up in this. I mean, I'm a fully qualified food technologist. I left Dean, worked in the civil service for 4 years, went to college at 20 doing food tech up in Cheshire, and then came to Cardiff, hires here, and then and stayed. Been here for about 40 years. And it just happened that it was about the BBC micros were happening, BBC microcomputers were happening, and my brother-in-law was actually part of that whole project in the BBC. So he had a room full of stuff in his house. So I was playing with these things and getting to know them. And the college suddenly noticed that, hey, this person here could do this. Did I want to stay on as a kind of like technician and do a bit of lecturing as well? And it kind of went downhill or uphill from there. But I then worked for sort of got a full-time job in one of the local training providers doing YTS and employment training, and moved from there into the more commercial sector. And I've just done so much over the years.
I love it. I think you are very standard in your story. None of us went to school to be part of learning, but it's the passion. It's a
It
passion.
is, and it's something, I've always said we had a big poster on the wall in one of the places I worked. I put up saying never stop learning. Every day is a learning day, and you learn something new all the time. And it's I mean, I think we were saying in the pre-chat, I'm off to Learning Tech next month with our new apprentice, our HR apprentice, who's majoring on the L&D side in COPD. And we're just going up to see, well, what's happened? We keep talking about AI. Is this actually happening or not
Yeah.
yet? But it will, and it's a new learning thing. And this is the thing: the whole L&D world never stops. It develops, it grows. Yeah, we have fads we go through, and then we suddenly realize they're fads, and we think, why did we do all that? But we are constantly learning, and it is really, really positive, I have to say. I mean, you say that about learning and development, and we say the same thing about the housing sector. Nobody sits at school and says, when I grow up, I want to be a housing officer. And we have all sorts of programs to get people from schools and colleges into housing. And I think that it would be positive to see the same sort of thing happening with L&D. How do we get people sort of involved in L&D literally from the early stages? But
Yeah.
hey, that's another podcast for another day.
That's right. Tune in. We'll get to that topic next. So, Bob, I can't wait to hear what we're going to talk about today because as an independent consultant, I'm always trying to do this for my clients. So we're talking about budgeting up, providing low cost content, either creation or curation. Where do we start, Bob? Do we need hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn?
We really don't. I'm really lucky in United Welsh. I have an IT department say, "Can I have?" And they go, "Yes. What is it again?" And so they're very, very positive. And so I have a couple of authoring tools and content libraries. So I'm kind of, I won't say, "Hey, I'm fine," but I'm okay. But I'm always conscious, having worked in so many places where there is no money, of how can we do this for low cost. And you're right. I mean, I was quoted recently £1,000 for one course for 1,000 users. there's 250 of us, and so many organizations listening will go, yeah, hey, that's us.
Yeah.
Um, and we don't have to look very far to find the tools that we need. Um, one call center I worked in, it was Newport and Bristol. I literally got Moodle, downloaded it, installed it on to an NT system, and then used a tool called Course Lab, which I don't think is around anymore, but it was free and allowed me to do content for free. And it kind of got me into, well, where can I get this content from? Um, and the biggest friend of ours is PowerPoint.
Mhm.
Quite frankly, now you can export from PowerPoint as MP4, as video format. So you can literally do a PowerPoint with voiceovers and some nice graphics, as long as you don't fill it up with words, because people can read these
Mhm.
words, so you don't need to be saying them out loud, but talking through a concept and whatever, keeping it short, you can export, you can do that and create something as an MP4. I have a love-hate relationship with SharePoint. I really drives me up the wall. But it works. And again, you can host that content on SharePoint. You can um, you can do so much with it just using kind of like a cheap headset, your laptop, PowerPoint. You've got loads there. Um, and so many organizations have just got PowerPoint built in. So, why wouldn't we? So there's all that side of things. I mean, from the other tool really, which is really useful, is your mobile phone.
Mhm.
My mobile phone, and I think most of them these days, shooting for video in 4K. Now, if you'd said to me 10 years ago, you're going to have your mobile phone will shoot video, I would have laughed, because it
Yeah.
was those days, it was 3GP and it was just like really blocky and whatever. And then to sort of to be able to say, yeah, and it'll be in 4K, the equivalent to that camera, which costs £3,000, I would have laughed. And you can actually do pretty good video, enough for what you need, using your phone. And it then comes back to getting hold of something like a small microphone. I have a clip-on mic which I use, which was about £20. I have a stabilizing selfie stick called a gimbal, which was about £50, and I can go out shooting video with voiceovers attached to it, with hardly anything. And then when it comes to editing, people go, "Oh, but Adobe is this big thing." No, no, Premiere Elements or Final Cut uh, are low cost. I mean, Premiere Elements is about £90. Um, so all of a sudden, you've got all the kit you need to create video. You incorporate that into your PowerPoint, you export it to video, you use SharePoint to host it. You can still download Moodle. Um, it's still doable. So all of that is there for you to create content. Because I think what I should say is the way we access content now and need content is very much changed. It is now um, small bits of very specialized learning, because so much of it is already out there. We don't need it, but it's small bits of very specialized learning that we need. Um, I mean, to give you an example, I was asked the other day, could I do a module on L LGBTQ plus residents? Okay, residents in a sheltered scheme, so they're older. Yeah, okay. Who have dementia? And I just like, oh come on, that's really niche, but it is an increasing issue,
Mhm.
where we have older people who, having grown up with LGBTQ being a a banned thing,
Yeah.
illegal in law, they're then developing dementia. They time slip. Have they come out? Who did I come out to? Who knows? Who doesn't know?
Yeah.
So it is a very real thing that we're experiencing in our sheltered scheme. So this was a very short bit of learning, um, that we put together, um, and it didn't take very long. Pulled in all sorts of different things, and we were able to do it. As far as curating content is concerned, YouTube is your friend, as they say. Um, and I think what we have to do is start as L&D people is in some cases there's still the need for the training room. There's still the need for the learning on the learning management system. But in a lot of cases, it's like, go away and watch this.
Mhm.
and you'll learn from this. And it's
Mhm.
disseminating what's good and what's bad. It's going out there and saying, this YouTube video is really good, make a note of it, or embed it into SharePoint, or embed it into your learning system if you do have one. But it's then saying to people, this is how you discern, this is how you find out what's good and what's not. Um, I have certain rules that I apply when I'm looking for stuff to do with benefits, for example. Um, does it apply to Wales? Because
Mhm.
the benefits in Wales are different from England in some cases. So those sorts of kind of unwritten rules are what we need to be doing. We need to be teaching people to find it.
Yeah.
We are learning in so many different ways. I mean, I make the point that I know I've learned a lot about Tourette's recently from a young lady called Nicole. Never met her, never met her mother who runs the channel, but she has a TikTok channel. She developed Tourette's when she was something like 12, 13, and her mum is running a TikTok channel about the family as a whole and their struggles and what Nicole has to go through as a 15, 16-year-old schoolgirl. And it is quite fascinating, some of the challenges she's coming up against. Likewise, there's somebody who's doing sign language and does a sign of the day. And you start, I don't say I'm learning BSL, but I'm sort of learning about BSL. And then the Excel and PowerPoint channels on Threads and TikTok and what have you um, are all there as well. And so there's all this sort of stuff which is there. We've just got to make sure people are directed in the right direction.
Yeah, I think we are completely on the same page. The exciting thing about AI and YouTube and video-based learning and whatever else we want to say, they're all just tools.
They are.
I think the new skill for the L&D practitioner is exactly what you said, Bob. It's that discerning. It's learning how to put a critical lens over things and say, this works, this doesn't. Because we all know the best way to learn is by watching. It is regardless of we want to
Mm.
watch, we want to replicate, we want to see someone do it, we want to hear their stories. Those short video-based learning, that's how you do it. But what we have to do is we have to put that lens over the top. So, Bob, where do I start? I'm a content creator. I have my mind inarticulate every single day. All of a sudden, I'm throwing that away and I'm saying, no, wait, I'm gonna have a different sort of mindset. I'm gonna learn how to discern. How would you teach someone how to do that?
I think the first thing you have to do is set yourself some rules. If you personally wanted to find a recipe for a meal or a
Okay.
dish, yeah, and you went off out to YouTube, well, the first thing is, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, is that YouTube video in a language you can understand.
Yeah.
Because I came across a site the other day, and it's a French recipe site, and it's all in French, and the closed caption translations on it are appalling. um, but sorry, um, but so that one's kind of written off. So we need to start looking at it. Is it localized to us? Because there are different rules, regulations, and
Mhm.
whatever in different countries. Obviously, the number one creator of content in this world is the USA. And no criticism of your homeland, it doesn't always fit what we're doing in the UK. So that would be the first thing I would say is it local to us? Is it from a body, an organization, a person who has a reputation in doing this?
Mhm.
Um, I sadly came across somebody at lunchtime the other day who was talking about a particular nutritionist who is an absolute am I allowed to use the word quack? They've been
Yes, you are.
struck off. They've been struck off. They've been banned.
Yeah.
They have no nutrition, and the stuff they're advising is dangerous.
Yeah.
So again, look at who your sources are. This week is Neurodiversity Week. We've had a lot of content come through which we've been curating onto our learning system, but
Mhm.
is it from people like the National Autism Society? Is it from people who are living with this? Is it
Mhm.
people who are giving good advice? So it is looking at that because otherwise, yeah, there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there, and you can disappear down rabbit holes.
Mhm.
So if things are starting to not sit well with you, then you have to say, okay, let's take a step back and look at who this
Yeah.
person is.
Yeah. I think if I were going to say the career of tomorrow, it might be this information literacy. And the funny thing is, I used to be a writing teacher. This is what we taught our kids. You
Yeah,
look at a source, you look at, what are they saying? Where are they coming from? Does it fit your situation? Is it answering your question? I think these are the skills we really need to be pressing, this information literacy. And I don't hear enough about it. Just to be completely honest, I don't hear enough about it. I hear this looming threat of AI, but we're not actually saying, let's just take a step back and let's talk about, forget fake news. Let's just start to be critical thinkers. So I love this. I love this conversation.
I totally agree with you. I mean, AI, I think, is a massive opportunity. I mean, first of all, I will say we haven't scratched the surface of AI yet. I was in a talk last year by the head of learning technology, or the world global head of learning technology for BP. And he was saying he spends about 20 hours a week just researching AI. And he was talking about where this is all going to go and how it's all going, where he thinks it could go, I should say, because we don't know. We haven't got a clue. We really are just scratching the surface. What I would say is when it comes to content creation, um, ChatGPT, I know it's the elephant in the room, but I recently had to write a module on unconscious bias. And I just literally went in and said, what are the main causes of unconscious bias? Jump, there's a load. Now, that wasn't my script, that was my foundation. And that's the whole thing with these tools is you start with them, you use them. And it's also what can we use them for? I mean, coming back to this external YouTube channel that I have, which is, as I say, it's completely nothing to do with L&D. But I went to ChatGPT and said, could you do me some YouTube chabs based upon a video that's got this in it? 25 tags straight away, a lot of which I hadn't thought of, a couple of which I didn't use. But instantly I go from 2 or 3 tags on my videos to 25. All of a sudden my views are going through the roof, well, not through the roof,
Yeah.
crying out loud, it's disused railways in South Wales. It's not going to go through the roof, but I'm seeing more people engaging because they're finding my videos. And that's the sort of thing that we need to make sure it's a tool. How do we use it?
Yeah.
Um, and it's the same as well as a lot of fear about the graphics tools that are there. But again, if you use them properly, they can be very useful. Um, quite apart from my create fluffy monsters for my granddaughter using them, and she loves it. Can we do a monster today, Bampy? Yeah, no problem. Um, I had to find a graphic recently. I did a very short module on slit strips and falls. We needed to have a quick refresher on it. One of the main causes of slit strips falls. Zump, thank you, ChatGPT. I need a picture of somebody falling over on a wet floor. Try finding that in a library when you have no budget. However, I created one using one of the graphics tools, and it looks realistic enough to use, and I put it in there, and no one's noticed.
Well, and then the people, and I think this is the other elephant in the room. Remember when training and development used to take months
Yeah,
in order to do one asset? We just simply don't have that type of time. And
no.
especially when you're dealing with compliance training, this is something that legally we're responsible. If you can use ChatGPT, which by the way, I do have a very special relationship with my ChatGPT. I'm very polite to him or her or them. I'm not sure how they identify, but um, it the work that I have to do, I just simply couldn't do it. But what it does allow me to do is focus on what I need to do and what I do best, not these things that just take up a lot of time. Um, but having said that, I think it is to your point, Bob, how we are using it and
Yeah,
our consumerism of it. And I think you're just straight on, you're right on it. You know, it allows us to do what we need to do in a quick amount of time so people can learn that small bit of information they need
yeah,
so they avoid. And so we're just building that ROI so much more than when we say it's going to take 6 months to put together a 20-minute video that no one is going to watch and they're going to just try to flip through and go forward. So I just am so excited about hearing more.
I totally agree. We have I think we have a whole sort of, if you like, there's a toolkit out there. Um, and if we can get that toolkit to work for us, we can get, um, how do they say it? It's just in time and just enough.
Yeah.
We can get these things done very, very quickly. And when you can take something, create it using, your 4K video recorder on your mobile phone, or with PowerPoint and export that as an MP4, you can get short and sweet things very, very quickly. Um, and certainly very rapid development, as you rightly say. Whereas before it would take way, way too long. I mean, just literally going out, used to be a film crew. Um, and I've been out with a film crew to film. And if you're a multinational company, you're doing a car commercial, or you're doing a telecoms commercial or something like that. Yes, of course, you're going to use a major studio, you're going to use a major crew. But where people are like myself in an organization which is kind of like an SME or just slightly larger than an SME, and you don't have those budgets, it's just not worth it. It really isn't. You can do all this in-house. I do think the future is going to very much be that there's two skills we're going to need. One, we're going to need to know how to write the scripts to make the AI tools work for us. Um, and watching some video recently created again by the open source AI people that was just so amazingly done, but was done from scripts. It wasn't generated, it wasn't digitally created. It was just like, create me a video of a turtle crawling across the beach, and there it was. It was incredible. And I think the other skill we're going to need to have is accurate learning outcomes, because I think we're going to end up with a tool, and I don't think we're far off this, where you're going to put your learning outcomes in. You're going to say how long you want the course to be. You're going to say who it's aimed at. You're going to, what level of intellectualism, if you almost, do you want? Hit the button, it will create your course. It may take a few minutes to do it, but it'll create a course. And there will be an e-learning course, or there'll be a video. Um, it'll take all its content off of the chat GPT, 5, 6, 7, 8, wherever we're at the time. It'll use the content generators to create the content. And you'll then be able to edit it and fiddle around with it. But content will be actually in minutes rather than months. And I do think that's where we're going to end up very,
Yeah.
very quickly.
I
Um,
agree 100%. And it really does take us, though, as a species, from making to evaluating, analyzing, disseminate. Like it's pushing us up that Bloom's taxonomy as a species. And
yes.
I think it's very exciting. And I think we should look at it as such. But to your point, we still need that human element of putting in the right descriptors, the right requests, understanding how which tool to use for what. And that's I would much rather use my brain rather than to
Mm.
figure out what hex code to use for this client or that. I'd much rather use my brain that way.
I totally agree with you, and I think um, we've come a long way from a copy of Top Class on a BBC Micro, which is where I started doing what we called then CBT, computer-based training. We've come a long, long way, uh, and I've seen that in the past 30 years. I think we're probably going to go further in the next 5 years than I've come in the past 30 years.
I
I
agree.
really genuinely do. I think L&D, and it has to adapt, it has to change. Otherwise, because what will happen, I believe, is if the L&D departments don't do it, people actually out there in the operations are going to do it for themselves. Why should we go to L&D to find information about this when I can just find it on YouTube? Why should we go to L&D for a course on this when I can just go here and there's one here I can already see? I think we have got to be very much on top of it to make sure that what we create is relevant, is, catchy and eye-catching. And I mean, I think you will probably know as well as I do, I've seen some awful courses in my time, absolutely dreadful courses in my time. Um, and we can't do that. We have to realize, we live in now a generation where you don't watch what you're told to watch because that's all that's on the four channels on the television. You can choose content from goodness knows how many different providers, and watch what you want when you want to watch it. It's the same with music. We used to listen to the radio, and I heard a story of a child in a car with their parent saying, "Mummy, why are you listening to what they're telling you to listen to?" And it like blows radio out the water. There are some radio stations where you can listen and you'll listen to an hour's worth of their content, and the next hour is more or less exactly the same. And it is, so why should I do that when I've got music streaming sites that I can patch through my car radio, and if I'm on a long journey, there it is. I can just listen to what I want because that's what I want to listen to. And I think it's the same for learning. Why should there's always going to be core stuff we have to do. So in the case of housing, we have to do safeguarding, we have to do mental health, we have to do or the health and safety side of things, we have to do personal safety. However, when it comes to how do I learn about what's the latest drugs on the street, I can get someone in who can do that as a training course, but actually there's an awful lot of stuff out there on YouTube you can watch now. And I think that's the challenge, is we have to learn when we use the one and when we signpost people to the other. So I think, yeah, I think it's going to get very challenging. And there are some people I don't think who are going to run with it.
I agree. But I also think it's very exciting. And this is a
Oh, yeah.
pivotal moment in L&D. Speaking of choosing content, we're very
Mm.
glad you chose us today. I'm going to say thank you to my wonderful co-host, Bob Price. Bob's links are going to be in the show note, including his YouTube channel. So if you are interested in his created content, which I am actually now quite interested after our pre-chat, please check him out. Bob, thank you so much for joining me today. This conversation was a perfect way to start my day. And with that, Voices from the Learning Network is out.